Hello and welcome to Progressive West Texas, the show where we talk to community leaders trying to make positive change. I'm your host, Cannon Roberts, also known as West Texas Progressive on TikTok and Instagram. So today I am talking to Angelina Mojica. You've met her a couple of times before. She ran for the at-large school board position for Lubbock ISD and did very well. And in fact, she was the only one that had a third candidate running. And if that person had not run, she probably would have won. And so while that is disappointing, it's exciting how well she did. It's exciting how far she got. And so one thing that you're going to see in this interview is that while she says she is not sure if she's going to run again, she seems very prepared to run again. And she has clearly analyzed her campaign closely, and she knows what to do differently, and she's ready, and she's pretty fired up. So even though she is hesitant to say yes, she's running, we're going to hear more from Angelina, and I'm really excited about that because we don't see that a lot in Lubbock. We don't see candidates who will come back. Usually, after a loss, they're done, and then the few that we do have who tend to run, over and over, are, they're the ones that are never going to win. They're the ones that they disappear in between campaigns. You never hear from them. And then, they think they're going to get, they're able to get attention by saying, wild off the wall things that aren't true or overly judgmental. And they think because that gets them attention, that's going to get them votes. And it never happens. It doesn't work. And so it's good to see quality candidates like Adam Hernandez and Bethany Luna and now Angelina Mojica, who are going to come back and who this did not get them down. So it's a really good discussion. I think Angelina makes some really good points. We do talk a little bit about the violence that has been happening in Texas and how that affects kids and how that affects students. So it's a really good conversation. Let's go talk to Angelina Mojica. Hi, Angelina. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Have you recovered from the campaign?
I did recover. Actually, after the campaign, I got really sick, and I was out for about 2 weeks. I'm on the recovery side of everything, but I think it was a lot of just that going and the stress and just all of that caught up with me.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it is. I've had the same thing. I did that in undergrad a lot. After every semester, I'd get sick, and I know I more than one candidate I've worked with has said that they've gotten sick afterwards. So, but I'm glad you're doing better now. Glad you're healthy. I'm sure all of us are a little more rested. So that's good. So let's just start. Tell me, we're going to talk about the campaign, but I want to start with tell me about some of your successes. What were you excited about after the end of the campaign?
At the end of it all, I think the most, the thing that brought most excitement to me was the fact that I was able to stand up for people that felt they weren't being heard. And the message that was very important to a lot of people in the community, which was that Dupree was closing, and it wasn't something that was a need, because I know the school wasn't low performing at all, and the justification behind it was just low enrollment, which I don't know. I mean, and there were parents that really, really were advocating for their children and wanted to see that turnaround. And so when I was approached to run for school board, it was with that message in tow. So I wanted to make sure that message was being spread and heard, because a lot of parents felt during meetings that the meetings were being held just for the sake of checking off a list. We held a meeting in front of the public. But a lot of parents felt like they were shut down, that they were dismissed or ignored. And so being able to be an advocate for the community in the sense of taking on an opportunity to be in front of cameras, to be in front of the radio personalities, just to be able to spread that message, I feel like I met that goal.
Yeah, that's really good. So while we're talking about Dupree, because we haven't talked about that much on on here. And so I would like to talk about Dupree a little bit more, because that was kind of what got everybody together, got everyone riled up and kind of lit that fire. And so I think a lot of people who are not involved in education, not involved in the work that you do, don't really understand the importance of having a neighborhood school. So why is that important, that neighborhoods like the or that schools like Dupree stay in their neighborhoods and stay open?
Well, it's definitely a community hub, a school, especially a school in a neighborhood such as Dupree's, and the heart of Lubbock neighborhood. It is historic. It's a historic building, so there's a lot of value in the history of Dupree, and the community, the sense of community that it brings, because these parents got to know each other. Their children were growing together. And now it's all displacement. So now children are going to be moved. And I know one little girl that was really kind of the passion behind my campaign. She was concerned. She was worried about her friends, and will I be able to see them again? And what is that going to look like? And here she is, a kindergartner, thinking of these things. I mean, we don't, as adults, we tend to dismiss children and their feelings and what they think and how they perceive situations, but they're very understanding. And they have questions, and it's kind of just, but this mother's like crying because she wants her child to have a normal childhood, and she's come from a background that was all but normal. And so, it was a really, it was an eye opener for me, I should say, because this is what I do every day, and just to have it hit me in the way it did, I was just like, yep, I'm going to step up. I'm going to help in any way that I can.
Yeah, that's great. So then what's something that you feel like you learned, or what's something that surprised you during the campaign, whether it was about campaigning, about the city? What surprised you, or what did you learn?
Because I've grown up in Lubbock. I'm born and raised here in Lubbock. So I don't think I was taken by surprise, because I'm very much aware of the culture, and a lot of the things that I did face in my campaign. I very much knew that if I stepped into this platform and I stood out there, that I was going to face a lot of the status quo. I was going to face a lot of the politics sides that Lubbock has, and it's very political here. And there's groups that are very loudly spoken about their beliefs and what they want, and their political views, and there's others that aren't. And I think I wasn't really surprised. I definitely knew that that's what I was putting myself into, and I think for me that was kind of the. I don't see myself being disappointed in the turnout. It was more of an expected turnout, so I kind of figured. But I think too, it's a lot of, okay, how does someone like myself and like Bethany and like Jason Ronaldo, how do we all go against that? Because that's exactly what we were having to do. And they fight for their causes. So
very much.
Yeah.
And so what did you find? Like, what do you think is the answer to, like, how you can fight against that? Like, how can you go up against that? So whether you run again in the future, or if you're gonna give advice to someone else who's thinking about it, how do you run against that?
A lot of it has to be being a relevant community member. So being someone that's very active and involved, and as active and involved as I am, I can still be more. And I think that's the key, is really building relationships in the community, in all sectors of the community. I mean, whether it's the Southwest, the East Side, the North Side, all of that, being able to build relationships in the community. I think that's the key factor, because then people know you. I know that was an experience for me, because even though people knew me, they didn't know that I was running. I had coffee with someone that I work with. I've been working with for the past 7 years. And when they read my name on the ballot, they're like, well, let me just be honest. I didn't vote for you. And I was like, okay, great, whatever. But he's like, I didn't know that that was you running either. So I voted for the incumbent because I knew her for many years. We've known her for many
Yeah.
years. And I'm like, okay. But I said, I ran. And then of course it's like, why did you run? And stuff
Right.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so why do you and we've talked, I mean, I've talked a little bit about Bethany, about this with Bethany, but why do you think it's so hard to get people to pay attention? Because that is something that we ran into, is so many people, like, people were texting Adam after the election and saying like, "Hey, how's the election going?" And he was like, are you kidding me?" Like, and we're not talking like, weeks after. It was like the next day. He was like, "So how do you think you're going to pull through?" So why do you think that is? Why is it so hard to break through to people in Lubbock?
And that's the same experience that I've had too. I think it's not advertised. Elections aren't advertised. It's not something. It's a really quiet event that's happening, and I don't know if that's by design. Again, this is the status quo we're talking about. But you don't hear people on the radio going, "Hey, it's May 7th, go out there and vote," or "Hey, elections are today, make sure you get out there and vote." It's just not something that's talked about a whole lot. And you can, as a grassroots campaign, I mean, that's what we all ran with Bethany, Adam, myself, and Jason. It was all grassroots. So we were out there. I mean, I remember knocking on doors and talking to people and going, I really care about the community, and that's why I'm here. I had a conversation with a gentleman talking about, well, I'm here on the East Lubbock because I care about the East Lubbock, and, I need your vote in order to make a difference. And they're like, yeah. But again, I don't know if that followed through or not, because it's easy to say yes and then, not know when the dates are, not know where the locations are.
Yeah.
I think that becomes an obstacle as well.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. I think you're right. And I think when you were saying, like, the fact that it's not advertised and whether that's by design, I think, like, one thing that I've run into is that promoting voting and, like, registering voters is seen as a, like, democratic progressive thing, which feels so weird. It's like, no, this is something we're all involved with. Like, none of y'all were all independent, like our municipal races. And so you were not running to represent a party, you were running as Angelina. And yet that a lot of those efforts, I do feel like are seen as like democratic and liberal. And so our city doesn't really do them. I remember one time, I don't remember which campaign it was on. I think it was on Miguel's campaign. But I started calling businesses that I knew kind of that would have a lot of like office workers. And so like I called one of the realtor companies that I knew would have a lot of people in their office. And I said, "Hey," I don't remember if I told them like if we were with the campaign or not, but I just said, "I'm with an organization and we're sending out tech students to register voters. Today's the last day to register if you want to vote in November." And the response was, "Oh, well, we're a conservative company." And I was like, okay, like, we're still wanting to register. And they're like, oh, no, we don't get involved in that. And that just kind of blew my mind. And so I do think you might be onto something, that this is kind of by design, because not necessarily, I don't know that the media is devious about it, but I do think in their efforts to appear nonpartisan and like, we're staying in the central, that they don't promote that stuff. And so I do think we need to find ways of doing that more. So I kind of alluded to this, but didn't directly ask, what are your plans next? Are you wanting to run for office again, or what are you thinking?
I'm still on the fence. I've been asked if I'm going to or not. I definitely told Bethany if she runs that she's got my full support and energy, and I'm Team Bethany. I don't know. I think if I do run, it'll be with a different strategy, because again, my stepping into it the first time, my message was no more school closures, and let's just let me just be a loud voice in that, and just talk about it. And it definitely did bring to light a lot of people that probably information to people that didn't know what was going on. And so I don't feel like I did bad in the elections. I actually did pretty good, better than I thought I was going to do.
Yeah.
Even with 3 of us running for the same seat.
And I was going to say, like, you know, and I think the outcome was pretty obvious that if there wasn't that third person, that you would have won. And so yeah, that is frustrating.
Yeah, it was frustrating. And there was a point, I think, when I first learned that person was going to run, that I even was talking to myself going, well, if we're doing it for the greater good, should I bow out gracefully and allow this person to step in? Because if that's, again, what's the goal? What's the intention behind running? Because my intention was never to be self-serving at all or any political gain at all. Like, my message was, I'm going to just talk about the things that people are upset about. Let's just talk about that. And that was the intent. So had I won, I would have stand fully on the promises that I made, which was to support the community, support schools, support teachers. So I don't know. I did. I thought about it a couple of times. And I think had he approached me and had said, you know, I really do want to make a difference, then I probably would have said, okay, let me support you, and had a talk with everyone, you know, and let's look at it at what is for the greater good.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I think that answer and that explanation is exactly why we need you in one of these places, is because the person that's willing to say, hey, I might not be the best choice right now, is usually the best choice. Like, it's usually that person who won't question it, you know. So I really, I hope you do. I hope you run for something else, because you got really close. You did very well. And so I think you are the type of person we do need in office. So thinking about that, I kind of want to talk more, like, there's been a lot happening in the news, and a lot happening that we didn't necessarily talk a lot about during the campaign because they weren't kind of relevant issues. And so I wanted to talk to you about, like, what do you hope for the school district, and maybe what are some of your thoughts on some of the discussions we're having now. And so the big thing is, you know, with gun violence, and we're having this renewed discussion. I do know our current city council, maybe not with, well, I guess since all the incumbents won, you know, they lean more towards the let's give guns to teachers, you know, side of it. And so what would you do if you were on the school board? What would you want to see? How would we handle this in Lubbock?
So very frankly, I don't think equipping teachers with guns is the answer. There's so many risk factors to take into consideration. What if a child gets a hold of that gun? What if there's an escalation? Because one of the situations and one of the issues when running was that students have become very disrespectful. Teachers don't know how to manage that disrespect, and a lot of conflict within the class dynamics. And so if you put a gun in there and a student's aware that there's a gun, or, you know, maybe a teacher has been so frustrated, you know, not only with what's going on in schools and, you know, the amount of work and pressure that they're under and deadlines and whatnot, but other, you know, personal factors that you add into that. And then it just creates an issue that could happen, and at what cost. So I don't think that's the answer. That's definitely not something that I would support. I would think safety is of utmost importance. So how do we emphasize safety? How do we implement safety in the schools without saying, okay, teachers, you are all going to be certified to carry an arm, you know, an armed weapon? Is that making sure that we are, you know, background check? Because I know when I go into schools, I volunteer, I have to ring a doorbell and tell them who I am, get admitted in there. I have to check in using my driver's license. Everything is locked down. I don't have access even to the office until I, you know, check in and things like that. So I think those are safety precautions already put in place. So I, you know, and they already know that I'm coming. So it's kind of like, oh, okay, Angelina's here, you know, representing her agency. So I think we have some good measurements in place, and, you know, maybe that means putting a police officer on guard. I don't know what that would take, and what's currently already in place, because I know I've seen drop my kid off at school, I see a police officer there in the front. So I don't know what's all in place, but I don't think giving guns to teachers is the answer.
Yeah. I would agree, especially, and I don't remember, it was 2 or 3 years ago, after Texas, made that a possibility. I know that there was a teacher who had a gun, or could have even been an officer, that left it on the toilet paper dispenser in the bathroom. And so we get that carelessness and those mistakes. And so the other thing too, so I talked about this on my TikTok this week, about how Abbott is wanting schools to do unannounced random audits, and so I had a lot of people say, like, oh, we're already doing drills, and from the letter that he put out, this is not a drill. This is different than a drill, because a drill is everybody knows, okay, there's an intruder, what do you do when that happens? An audit is a stranger tries to break into the school building and wander around and see, and what they can do. And so to me, it just seems like a way of creating trauma and causing accidents. And so how do you feel about, like, what does that do to kids' psyche doing something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it just heightens that that mental health situation. I mean, it's just going to make it where children are anxious. It's a simulation is what he's asking for, a simulation of someone breaking into the schools and walking around. And what does that simulation look like? Is it like a secret shopper that goes into a realtor, a realtor store, and is like, okay, let me grade you on your customer service, let me grade you on that? Or is it someone that's actually like causing havoc? What does that simulation look like? Because I've done simulations, like poverty simulations and things, and you actually walk through the shoes of someone in that situation. So, I mean, it can create trauma. It can create anxiety. It can create children not wanting to go to school because of the fear. I remember having a conversation with my daughter before she graduated high school. And she was like, Mom, did you ever think that us having to worry about our lives going to school because of shooters would be an issue? And that really struck me, because I was never having, in school, I never had to worry about gun violence. I never had to worry about someone breaking in, trying to shoot anybody. And for my children to have to go through that, and that, not even really experiencing that, but hearing about it, I mean, that already creates a sense of anxiety, because I mean, they're thinking about it already. So for a simulation to happen, that could, I mean, not every kid is built the same, and not every kid has the resilience, of this. They're not cookie cutters. So it can be something that works for one child and really pushes back, another child, emotionally and mentally into, a fear, a trauma, something of that sort.
Yeah. I mean, I really relate to what you're saying about having that, just thinking about it. Now we're constantly thinking about it, because I don't remember if I was in the 8th or 9th grade, but I was at Irons Junior High when Columbine happened. And after that, I know we had one, I think it was 2 students from Columbine, like, moved to Lubbock. They had family or parents here and started going to Irons. And just having that person come from that high school where they experienced that trauma and come to our high school, well, it wasn't traumatic, but now we're constantly thinking about it, because we knew this person who's in class with us, she just lived through this, and like how, and so that, and again, this is so tangential, that the fact that she just moved to our school, and it makes a lot of sense that they wanted to get out of Columbine. Like, I don't blame the students at all, but it made us all very much think about it. So how more is that going to affect students, when they go through this? Now, the other thing too that we keep hearing is about hardening schools, and I understand that, like, thinking about it in terms of, like, effectiveness, neither of us might be able, to talk about
Mhm.
that. But that would definitely have an effect on the students. I mean, just thinking about my students who were in prison versus my students in the community. Just the
Mhm.
fact that they were locked up, like it created a different situation. And
Mhm.
so how do you think this idea of hardening schools, making it harder to get in and out, in many ways trapping them inside, throughout the
Mhm.
day, how does that affect, how do you think that would affect students?
And it really kind of just depends on the student, I think, too, because one, if you have a high anxiety, fear-driven student who's worried constantly about safety, then being locked in and being locked, that might be okay because that might be a sense of, safety, felt safety for them. On the other hand, if you have students that again come from environments where they're very much treated the same way, it may just induce behaviors. They may feel institutionalized. They may feel a different way about it. So it really just depends on the student and the environment and what that looks like. I mean, it's not an easy question to answer, I don't think, because of what's gone on in the community, just in the
Mhm.
world today. And so it just really depends on that student because it can just enhance behaviors that aren't best for a school environment. And I know some students that feel like they're constantly being watched and constantly being
Mhm.
told and locked down, and there's this real kind of structured hard structure on them. It almost like triggers a rebellion of some sort, like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, let me breathe a little bit.
Yeah.
Whereas again, another student who feels very insecure in the safety of the school environment may thrive in that because then they have that felt sense of safety. It just
Yeah.
depends. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm someone that really relates with that because I, like, with my ADHD, like, I, as soon as I have a schedule, like, I just rebel against it, for some
Hmm.
reason.
Yeah.
And I would definitely have felt the same way if I knew, like, once I enter here, I cannot go outside for 8 hours. Like,
Hmm.
that would kind of drive me nuts. Even when I was subbing for a while, I could, like, go out to my car if I wanted to go on, if I had a few minutes, I could go on a
Hmm.
Starbucks run. But just knowing that, like, I cannot leave this campus, kind of like I didn't like it. I didn't
It
like
makes
it.
you want to find the loopholes. It makes you want to find those
Yes.
escapes. I can very much relate because I'm very much the same way. I feel like, and going, being able to go outside and breathe
Mhm.
fresh air, take in some sun. I mean, that does well for your learning experiences, as a student, because it's just kind of a refresh, a restarter. It's mindfulness. You
Mhm.
can get grounded. We're getting ready to do some summer camps, and that's one thing that we have in the schedule is we've got outside playtime. Let's be free. Let's play. It's of course safe in an environment that's safe, but again, we still need that exposure to release energy and whatnot. Especially children that would be ADHD. I mean, they need that. They need that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, my legs didn't stop moving
Hmm.
during the day, and man, my teachers couldn't stand that. And yeah, no, yeah, no, even as an
Hmm.
adult and having all my, like, coping mechanisms, like, I still need that. I need that release. And with what you were saying, with, it seems like teachers are saying, that there's a lack of respect. Like, it seems like that would exacerbate it
Hmm.
for certain types of students. Obviously, not for everyone, but
Hmm.
yeah. So thinking about, Lubbock specifically, whether it is these issues, these kind of statewide or national issues, or, more locally, what are some of the things you hope the school board will kind of take on, or address or deal with? What would your agenda be if you had one, and what do you hope they will do?
Well, I think right now what would be on the agenda is just reassuring parents and teachers and faculty and students safety. When you're coming into the school, you're gonna be safe, and whether that means having a town hall meeting or having a meeting at each school during open house or something, just to give that reassurance that these are the policies, these are the procedures, this is what's in place to assure that your children will be safe here in the community, and allowing parents to question and ask and comment and provide feedback too, because their children are participating in our school program. So that's what I would do as number one. And then second, again, allowing for that continuum of communication to flow back and forth, and not being already dead set in a decision, but prior to making decisions, asking the community, asking parents, asking faculty, what is it that's going to be best for you, because they're the frontline workers and they're the ones that are in it. School board just kind of sits behind a desk, from what I've seen. And so, hopefully get more involved, not just during campaigns, but, get more involved and really understand what the structures are in each school. Because from what I understand, and just from the small time that I was interacting with faculty and teachers, it's very different from one school to another. And so I think that involvement is a must.
Yeah. Well, and the one thing that I do think is universal across all of our schools is the lack of communication. Like whether it's teachers or parents or students, like there seems to be a consistent lack of communication. And so what are some of the things that you heard about that lack of communication, and how do you think those could be solved?
I mean, again, it's all about relationship building. It's about making yourself available to teachers, making yourself available to the community. One trustee that does it really well is Lala Chavez. Like, she does it great. I mean, you see her everywhere. So she's accessible. So I would just question and hope, that the others learn that is a true value to them being on the school board. And if they run again, that is a value that they could hold. And that's the change that was being asked, really, when the three of us were running, is just, whoever wins, bring these new things, these new items into play, because that's going to be the game changer. And teachers felt that they were very, like parents, dismissed, not valued, not respected. And I mean, and that's hard, because you're passionate, you step into a job role and you're passionate about it. So you don't view it as a position of occupation, but as a position of purpose. But as things go down the line, then you're kind of like, well, why? You question that purpose. Like, why am I really here? And you see that turnover, and it's a high turnover, and new teachers aren't just jumping in, going, okay, we can replace those that are burning out. No, at this point, it's a scarcity right now.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And I do think, I think availability and communication could really turn things around. So are there any last things you want to say about the campaign, or any final thoughts on that?
I think just the final thoughts. I feel like I was able to present the message. That was my goal. If I do decide to run again, my strategy will be different. I will be more assertive, because I really did play it nice. I did. And I was learning. It was a big learning component for me. So I really appreciate that value too, because I got to see my opponents, and not only that, when I was running, people wanted to put me red or blue. Let me put you in a box before I make a decision. And I mean, I think, that's not, I can't be put in a box. I'm very much an independent person. And when I'm running for a cause, I'm running for reason, I'm running for, the greater good. And it has nothing to do with my values. It has nothing to do with what I believe, because I work in the community and I serve the community. I use those strengths that I have in the service that I offer, and putting myself out there and being able to serve others with an open mind, with an open heart. And I think that's one thing that's lacking on the school board. And that's one thing that I would really emphasize if I do run again. I will question, I will rebuttal, I will redirect things questions that are put in place to continue fear in there. You know what I'm talking about, Canon, CRT, all of those things. Like, and be able to really bring fact, because when you have fact and you have truth, you can't really argue.
Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely correct. Well, and I do, we did have a lot of discussions kind of behind the scenes of like, oh, is this too harsh? And so you feel like, so after the fact, now that you can look at it, you're like, oh no, we should have gone at them more. Like you feel like you should have been more direct. Like what brought you to that conclusion?
I think just seeing the turnout brought me to the conclusion, because I think had I been more assertive and not aggressive, because here's the thing, as a Hispanic woman, when I start challenging or I start bringing fact, then it almost, people want to look, oh, she's just angry, she's just mean, she's just you can't make her happy. But that's not true. And so being able to do that, as I did in the campaign that I ran, but just questioning, the one thing that was thrown at me was the lack of experience. But being able to sit there and go, well, what kind of experience are we looking at? Because here's the facts. There are teachers that are not being heard. There are parents that are angry with the school board because they are feeling like they're dismissed and ignored. So those are the facts. So if I work in the community and I serve the community, what experience is lacking? So being able to challenge that with the incumbents, and I didn't really receive a lot of the backlash that maybe Bethany received, or even Adam. I didn't receive a lot of that, but I think too, because there wasn't any of that they could really arm themselves with. And so I think that too is a reason why I could be a good candidate in the future as well, because though I love Bethany's platform, and I think that is a vital issue in our schools right now, and someone that knows and understands that needs to be on there too. And so I'm team Bethany all the time. But
so what gives you the experience to be on a school board? Because we have lawyers on the school board, we have people in real estate and development. Like, the LISD has lawyers. Like, we don't need lawyers, they have accountants. And so what is better experience than someone who works with kids already, who works with social work? So why do you think that's an argument? Why do people say you lack experience, but yet that wasn't an issue when the lawyers and the people in real estate ran?
Right. And I think that's the rebuttal that you bring to the table, is like, okay, but 4 years ago, you weren't experienced when you ran and you were still elected. So how's that any different for myself? You had 2 years to learn your job. And so now you're 2 years in it. And, these are the complaints that are still being presented.
Yeah.
So again, what experience, and that's just the question, what is the experience needed for this job? Because you're telling me we need people with experience. Well, define what that experience looks like. Define what that experience is. I think that would have been the rebuttal question that I would have asked my incumbent. Like, tell me what experience is needed on the school board. You tell me, give me your definition of that. I think there needed to be more of those questions, because then that would really not allow or permit the other questions that were introduced. Because if there was more of, holding them accountable, holding them really to the role, right? What's the role here? Then it wouldn't give a lot of time for those other questions, because you can simply take those other questions and ask too. Okay, because I think when asked about CRT, and I said it's not divisive, and I really, I have CRT being a collegiate teaching theory in collegiate level, and really government processes and policies, not being equitable. That's really what CRT is. So the argument, so then defining that and saying the argument isn't CRT, the argument is accurate history. And that's not CRT, so tell me what's the fear behind that? And again, challenging the incumbents, because I was being asked of my beliefs. I was being asked of things that weren't even school board related. Right. So let me ask you, define for me what that is that you're hearing, because what is it? CRT is not divisive. It's the people that give it power that make it divisive.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. And I'm fully with you. And this is why, again, I think you really need to consider running again, because now you have those answers. Yeah,
it would be a different Angelina that approach next time running, because I'm not going to be running not only for the community, but also to really for myself, to show that, quote unquote, I am the experienced one that needs to be on the seat there. Because if you really do want change and someone that's compassionate about your children and teachers and community, then I'm the person.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. All right. Well, 2 or 4 years, whichever one it is, we will see you on there soon. So my last question, I've asked you in the past, like, what gives you hope, but I want to specifically make it about the campaign. What was something that happened during the campaign that gives you hope for the future?
I think the hope that was, you had 3 individuals, Adam, myself, and Bethany, who never thought, probably in a million years, that they would see themselves in this light of, a political realm or running for anything. And the hope that it brought was the change in heart and understanding for the 3 of us. So if that can happen for the 3 of us, it can happen for anyone. And that's the hope, because it's not about running and it's not about the campaign. It's about the cause. It's about the community and standing up for the greater good. And again, the hope that it could bring to people, that if we could just reach out and just tell about the importance of voting, tell about the importance of their right to vote. I mean, they do. They have the right to and the right not. And, when they don't feel connected to those options, then they're going to choose the other. And I think that's too why you see that turnout, because there's a lack of understanding. And I can talk about that because I come from that lack of understanding. I come from that. It wasn't ever anything that was spoken in my house, so here I am, 46 years old, and going, oh, okay, yes, it's important. And I think that was the passion that was birthed throughout this whole campaign, is that people can make a difference. People can definitely make a difference on a local level. And then that just continues to grow and things can change. But it takes more than just a person. It takes a whole community.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Angelina, on that note, we're going to leave it there. That was a great way to end. So I really appreciate you being on and having this discussion.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure I will have you back to talk about more issues about Lubbock. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cannon.
All right. And we're going to leave it there. Those were some really powerful words by Angelina. So thanks for watching. I will see you next week.